But the biggest thing is the leadership change, the leadership shift, and the leadership shift indicates a change in direction of the whole project. And so while the previous leadership were focused on creating an alternative Airbnb, the reality is that a lot of people on Airbnb won't come to Dtravel for many reasons. But one of the reasons why is that they're willing to pay the extra cost because of the advantages that they get, or the not enough advantages they get with Dtravel. Does that make sense? So people aren't going to leave Airbnb for saving 10% because there isn't enough perceived advantage with Dtravel. They don't see the value. They think, well, I'm willing to pay the extra 10% or 15%, whatever it is, because the cost benefit is still with Airbnb. I'm not getting enough benefit with Dtravel to justify shifting to Dtravel. It doesn't matter about the size. It's about the benefit. It's about the cost benefit. And so they're willing to pay the extra on Airbnb or booking.com because they're not getting enough advantages with Dtravel. That's changing. And the way we're going to change that, and just to kind of give people a little bit of a hint, is here, the token. And what we've been talking about in the past, and we've been talking about this for a long time now, over 2 years, has been an ongoing discussion with a disconnection between the token and the real world network. And so what you're seeing on the higher time frame with TRVL is a disconnect. This is the disconnect. The token keeps on going down in price. Effectively, people are just selling, buying and selling, but the sell pressure is more than the buying pressure. And what you're getting is the opposite in terms of the real world network. You see that? The growth of the network, the growth of the value of the network is going up. There's a massive disconnect. They're almost opposite. It makes no sense. The reason why is because the previous leadership created a tokenomics idea. If you go to the documents, you can read about that here in the documentation. A tokenomics model which didn't work. It was broken from the get-go. Actually, I don't think it was broken, okay? I think it was, I don't dare I say too far ahead of its time, but I think it was assuming that the whole world was using Dtravel and Dtravel was already a success. So a massive assumption was made without taking into consideration of how to get from nothing or a fledgling, a small startup, to the size of what is required for this tokenomics model to work. So this was only going to work with the assumption that Dtravel was already a thriving business, with no consideration of how to take it from a fledgling business or a fledgling decentralized application to a successful decentralized application. There was no in between. There was no way to grow it from nothing to something. And so we can have discussions and debates about tokenomics all day long, but the reality is that the market rejected this idea. It's just a fact. When this was launched, somewhere around March last year, I'll show you on the token price. It was launched in March around here. See that? That's when the new tokenomics was launched. And what happened? The price of TRVL dropped 78%. We had a buyback, but the buyback only ended up in a lower high, and then we got the big sell-off. And the big sell-off coincided with the previous CEO going on maternity leave without instilling an interim CEO, so the Dtravel ended up without a CEO for a period of time. There was a lot of hush-hush at what was happening. There was no official announcement, and people who were behind the scenes disingenuously probably sold and left the project, and that led to a massive sell storm. And what happened was that we lost the all-time low. It was somewhere around February, And then that's when I called for heads to roll. I called for heads to roll, and effectively I was pushed out of the project because the previous leadership was unwilling to take accountability and responsibility for what they had actually created, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Okay? Bringing us to our current position. Nothing's changed in terms of what needs to change. The previous tokenomics doesn't work. It's not relevant because it only is applicable to a massively successful business, which we're not at yet. And so what needs to change is the tokenomics. Fundamentally, that is the first thing that needs to change. And that is what I'm saying is going to change. The tokenomics is changing, right? What we're going to do is we're going to correct the mistake that was made, which is the disconnection between the value of the network, which is growing, and the value of the token, which has always been disconnected from the network growth. That's the primary change that's coming in the future, and the future is not far along. I mean, I'm talking near future. I'm not talking midterm or higher time frame. I'm talking lower time frame. I'm talking as a matter of weeks or maybe a couple of months or something like that, very close. That's what's changing. And that is going to change everything, because then as the network grows, the token will grow. And then what we can do then as Dtravel true believers is grow the real world network. And that's actually what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to grow the real world network, because then there'll be a direct connection between the growth of the real world network and the value of TRVL. And in the future, what you're going to see is you're going to see this number of listings go from 5,644 to 25,000 to 50,000 to 100,000, and we'll be able to pump during the bear market. And that's our aspiration. That's our ambition. So this is the biggest thing that's going to be changing. It's a massive change in direction. We're going to give TRVL real value within the Dtravel ecosystem, value that people will be able to have from the get-go. You're going to understand why to accumulate and hodl TRVL for the long term. And you're going to understand why grow the real world network. You're going to understand why bring your bookings onto Dtravel as opposed to Airbnb. And you're going to understand why people should travel with Dtravel. So we're targeting all of those areas. We're targeting the hosting, the investor side, why stake, why hold TRVL for the long term, the hosting side, why people should bring their properties onto Dtravel, why people should bring their bookings onto Dtravel. We're tackling the traveler side, why people should travel on the Dtravel network, and why people should use TRVL to book and reserve properties on the Dtravel network, and the community side. And it's going to be a grassroots movement. We're not just talking about a pump and dump tokenomics or a disconnected tokenomics from the real world growth. We're talking about a movement that we're going to create. It's not going to be another Shopify. It's not going to be another Airbnb. We're talking about a new idea, a new economy that we're going to be creating. It's going to be centered around positive energy coming into travel, targeting community, targeting travelers, targeting hosts and operators, and targeting investors, the whole shebang. Okay, so this is coming. This is happening. Watch this space. I've given you a lot of information. And so naturally, we're starting to see some bullish price action. Let's just go to the charts.